And one more, the Playboy Jazz Festival season kicked off featuring the Johnny Crawford Orchestra.
Our guest today stars as one of the most iconic TV shows in history as Mark McCain.
In the golden age of American television, there emerged a young performer whose name would become synonymous with a generation's childhood memories. Born John Ernest Crawford on March 26, 1946, in Los Angeles, this child possessed something that cannot be manufactured or bought in Hollywood, an authentic connection with audiences that transcended the scripted scenes he performed. Growing up in a household steeped in musical tradition, where his mother played classical compositions with practiced elegance, and his grandfather had served as a concert master in one of America's most prestigious orchestras, Johnny was practically destined for entertainment. Yet no one could have predicted the remarkable heights he would reach, nor could they have foreseen the devastating heartbreak that awaited him decades later. At merely 13 years old, Johnny achieved what most performers work their entire lives to accomplish, securing the lead role opposite Chuck Connors in the ABC Western series The Rifleman. He became an integral part of a show that would eventually become a cultural touchstone. The chemistry between the established actor and the young performer was undeniable, creating a father-son dynamic that felt genuine because it genuinely was. Audiences across America invited this boy into their living rooms week after week, watching him grow up on screen, rooting for his character Mark McCain through various challenges and adventures. By 1959, at an age when most teenagers were worried about school dances and final exams, Johnny received recognition that most actors would consider the pinnacle of their careers, a Primetime Emmy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor in a Dramatic Series. Simultaneously, this remarkable young man launched a musical recording career that produced several chart-topping hits. His signature song, Cindy's Birthday, climbed to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100, establishing him not merely as an actor, but as a legitimate recording artist whose appeal extended across multiple entertainment mediums. Johnny had learned to ride horses with genuine proficiency, studied trick roping under master teachers, and developed the skills necessary to portray an authentic Western character. He embodied the complete package of what a young entertainer could be: talented, versatile, handsome, and charismatic. The trajectory of his career seemed to point toward unlimited success, the kind of future that most people only dream about achieving. Yet the same industry that had lifted Johnny to such extraordinary heights would, in the years to come, demonstrate its cruelest nature. As he transitioned from boy to young man, his physical appearance changed in ways that Hollywood found inconvenient. The wide-eyed, vulnerable child actor who had captured hearts could not simply be reimagined as a romantic lead. Casting directors looked at him and saw only what he used to be, not what he could become. The roles that had come easily when he was young disappeared, and those appropriate for his age went to other performers. This frustrating period represented more than simple career disappointment. It represented a systematic rejection by an industry that had built him up only to discard him. The financial reality proved even more devastating than the professional rejection. Due to the predatory contract structures of early television networks, Johnny received no residual payments from the countless reruns of The Rifleman that continued to air worldwide. As the show entered decades of lucrative syndication across multiple countries, generating millions of dollars in revenue, the young performer who had helped create that success received not a single dollar. Network executives and production companies accumulated wealth, while Johnny struggled with mounting bills. This financial disparity would haunt him for the remainder of his life, a bitter reminder that being the star of a hit show did not necessarily translate into long-term financial security. Throughout the subsequent decades, Johnny navigated a career that increasingly felt like survival rather than fulfillment. Guest appearances on various television shows became his primary source of income, brief, forgettable roles that paid bills but offered little artistic satisfaction. The typecasting that had followed him throughout his adult life created a psychological burden that cannot be easily quantified. He was trapped by his own success, permanently associated with a character he had portrayed as a child, unable to convince casting directors that he possessed depth beyond that single role. Every rejection at auditions felt personal, every missed opportunity a reflection of his perceived irrelevance. In his personal life, Johnny experienced profound emotional losses that paralleled his professional struggles. He fell deeply in love with a woman from South Dakota named Charlotte McKenna during his school years, a relationship that represented a genuine human connection outside the entertainment world. However, the demanding schedules of his career made maintaining that relationship impossible. The constant traveling, recording sessions, and work obligations created an insurmountable distance between them, eventually leading to their separation. For 25 years, Johnny lived without contact with the woman he considered his soulmate, though her memory remained a constant presence in his consciousness. The miraculous reconnection and subsequent marriage in the 1990s brought joy that seemed almost scripted in its perfection. Yet even this happiness was marred by rumors and separation periods that tested their bond. Finding purpose beyond acting, Johnny channeled his passion into founding the Johnny Crawford Dance Orchestra, a big band jazz ensemble dedicated to preserving authentic 1920s swing music. This venture represented a genuine artistic calling, allowing him to connect with the musical heritage his grandfather had embodied. However, lacking corporate backing, Johnny invested his own savings into the orchestra, purchasing expensive vintage sheet music and paying the salaries of professional musicians. What should have been a fulfilling creative outlet instead became another financial burden, slowly depleting his personal resources. The orchestra was beautiful and artistically meaningful, but it was draining him economically during a period when his finances could least afford such sacrifice. By the mid-2010s, those closest to Johnny began noticing alarming changes in a man who had always possessed remarkable mental acuity. Someone who could recall obscure songs from the 1920s, their original keys, and the musicians who first recorded them suddenly began forgetting lyrics during performances. Words that had once come naturally now eluded him entirely. His companions exchanged worried glances, each recognizing that something profound was wrong with their friend and leader, though no one wanted to articulate their deepest fears. Following extensive private medical evaluations and a period of observable cognitive decline, the official announcement came in 2019. Johnny Crawford had been diagnosed with severe, irreversible Alzheimer's disease. The news struck his admirers like a physical blow. The boy who had charmed millions through television, the teenager whose voice had graced the radio waves, the man who had kept classical traditions alive through his orchestra, was now losing his mind to a disease that offered no cure and no mercy. The progression proved devastatingly rapid, shocking even experienced medical professionals with its aggressive nature. Johnny, who had once delivered nuanced performances requiring emotional intelligence and artistic precision, experienced a nearly complete loss of speech. Constructing sentences became impossible. Articulating basic thoughts to those he loved required concentrated effort and usually resulted in incoherent fragments. The very instrument that had made him famous, his ability to communicate, perform, and connect with audiences, was disappearing. As his cognitive decline accelerated, Johnny could no longer lead his orchestra, could no longer attend the fan conventions that had provided his emotional lifeline for decades, and could no longer maintain his cherished independence. When he began wandering away from home, confused and frightened, unable to remember his own address, his family faced an impossible decision. The risk of serious injury or worse became too significant to ignore. Johnny was relocated to a specialized memory care facility in Los Angeles, a clean and well-staffed institution, but fundamentally a place where people go when they can no longer be cared for at home. Within those secure walls, the former Emmy-nominated actor spent his days in quiet isolation, cared for by nurses who did not know they were tending to a man who had once been famous. The cruelest aspect of Alzheimer's disease is that it does not quickly kill the body while the mind remains intact. Instead, it slowly destroys the person while keeping the body alive, a form of prolonged suffering that devastates both the afflicted individual and their loved ones. Johnny was still breathing, still existing, but the man he had been was already gone. And then came the financial reckoning. Despite a lifetime spent in entertainment, His modest savings of approximately $500,000 vanished within months, as specialized memory care and medical expenses accumulated. An industry that had made fortunes from his talent and image offered no pension, no health benefits, no assistance whatsoever. When his family faced financial devastation and a complete lack of institutional support from the studios that had profited from his work, a longtime friend stepped in. Paul Peterson, himself a former child star, had founded a child actor advocacy organization and recognized that he was witnessing the most severe case he had ever encountered. An Emmy-nominated performer whose work still aired in syndication globally could not afford his own basic care. Peterson initiated a public crowdfunding campaign, and the response from fans worldwide was immediate and overwhelming. People who had grown up watching the Rifleman opened their wallets, each contribution representing not just financial support, but emotional recognition that this man had mattered to them. Yet even with these generous donations, Johnny could only survive, not flourish. Fans and preservationists organized benefits and silent auctions at historic locations to secure emergency funds for his medical care. Strangers who had never met Johnny, motivated only by their love for the show he had starred in as a child, dedicated their time and energy to keeping him alive. The irony was unmistakable and painfully obvious to everyone involved. An industry generating billions in revenue could not take care of one of its own. It required the charity of common people to prevent a celebrated entertainer from dying without adequate care. When the global pandemic struck in 2020, Johnny found himself completely isolated within his care facility. His wife Charlotte could not hold his hand without extensive precautions. Masked nurses cared for him, their faces hidden and voices muffled, while he remained confused about why the people he loved could not visit him as often as before. Despite all safety measures, he contracted the virus. Though his body initially managed to clear the primary infection, the illness inflicted permanent damage on his already fragile respiratory system. His recovery was incomplete. He emerged weaker, thinner, barely able to lift his head from the pillow. Almost immediately, he developed pneumonia, aggressive and fast-moving, attacking lungs already ravaged by previous illness. As his organs began failing, Johnny was transferred from facility to facility, each move bringing him closer to Los Angeles, where his devoted wife maintained vigil. On April 29, 2021, Johnny Crawford took his final breath at age 75. He died peacefully in a small room with soft lighting and the quiet beeping of medical equipment. Charlotte held his hand throughout his final moments, a touch of human connection and devotion in a body that had endured so much suffering. His legacy, however, endured far beyond his physical death. The simple marker at his grave in Apple Valley served as a humble memorial to a boy who had once made the world fall in love with him. Tributes poured in from multi-generational fans and Western historians who celebrated not only his performances, but his character. Even when Alzheimer's had stolen everything else, that gentle sparkle remained in his eyes. The disease had taken his mind and the industry had taken his money, but it could not erase the memories he had gifted to millions. Johnny Crawford's story is ultimately a tragedy of systemic failure and human kindness, a reminder that behind every screen performance exists a real person deserving of dignity and care. Like, subscribe, and follow for more.